For those who don't know me, my name is Dion, and I'm just so passionate about photography. It's all about chasing that perfect light, capturing a moment in time to cherish and share forever. It's a spectacular morning here on the Chobe this morning. I'm going to just show you in a moment. The water is like a mirror and the sun's busy coming up, and we can hear all the birds are out. Fish eagles are crying. Absolutely Africa at its best. I'm going to be sharing one or two tutorials I do in Adobe Lightroom Classic. So sit back and relax and enjoy these images in this video with me. And I'm going to quickly turn the camera around to show you the sunrise here on the Chobe River.
Take us back that way, Joseph.
Yes.
In there.
Alright, equipment and tips used to capture these images on the Chobe. My camera body was a Canon R5 Mark II mirrorless camera, and I used a Canon RF 200 to 800mm zoom lens to try and get me as close as possible to the subject. That being said, always try and get as close as possible to your subject. Ensure that you have sufficient light, obviously not too late in the afternoon or too early in the morning. Also, you don't want the harsh midday sunlight. Depth of field. I highly recommend a slightly higher f-stop to ensure you get a crisp, sharp depth of field image. With a Canon 200 to 800, the f-stop's going to start at f9 and higher, so that's sufficient for me. You could always use post-editing software to blur out your backgrounds. But for that special moment, once in a lifetime opportunity moment, I'd rather have a crisp, sharp image that's in focus, that has good depth of field, which you can always post-edit afterwards. So I recommend an f9 or higher, depending on your lens. And then obviously lastly is the fastest possible shutter speed for the light conditions. Until recent, I was convinced that manual setting with auto ISO was the best way to go to capture wildlife images and obviously use the fastest shutter speed. But thanks to CNP Safaris, and credit to them, I learnt a new setting of aperture priority, which has opened up another world for me in capturing sharp images, especially wildlife, fast action, moving subjects. And by doing this, you go to your aperture priority setting on your camera, AV for Canon or A for Nikon, check out on whatever your camera makers. Then you dial in an ISO of 3200, which is really manageable these days with post-editing software. This is going to drive up your shutter speed to capture that fast action moment. And then you dial in your aperture. Obviously, I would go for minimum f9, especially on a long focal length. I think the Canon 200 to 800 is only going to allow you from f9 up, but that's going to ensure that you get a good, crisp, sharp image with great depth of field. You can always blur your background with post-editing software. And then, very important, the exposure bias or your EV compensation, dial in -1.5, obviously pending the light conditions. And this in itself is going to drive up the shutter speed. So your camera in aperture priority setting is going to determine the best or fastest shutter speed with the ISO set constant at 3200 and an aperture of f9 or higher. It's going to give you, with that light compensation, -1.5 stop, it's going to give you the fastest shutter speed possible. And with post-editing software, you're going to get those nice, crisp, sharp images. And with these settings, I've always achieved a shutter speed of over 1/4000th of a second. So give this aperture priority a try. I can assure you won't be disappointed. I was not convinced initially, but after seeing the results, very surprised and very happy with these settings. So give it a go. Right, welcome back to another tutorial, and here we have a brown hooded kingfisher just killed a locust and orientating the dead locust to swallow it. So it's tossed it up in the air here to swallow it head down first. And this image was captured on the Chobe River in Botswana. The first thing I'd like to do is do a crop. So we're going to crop in. We don't want to go too close because it can also affect the overall detail, but it's sitting on a nice, interesting dead branch here on a tree, and there's the distance behind the subject is quite far, so we've got quite a nice blurred background, and I'll crop it to about there. Next thing I generally do is bring up the vibrance to about 30 here in the global adjustments under the edit button over here, and push up the saturation to about 4. Next thing I like to do is generally lift the shadows, so reduce the shadows by pushing it up to the white side to about there, to about 30, around 30. I'd like to increase a little bit of whites because it is slightly underexposed, and slightly reduce the blacks as well to the white side. The overall warmth, the temperature is quite a nice warm image, but for me it could be possibly slightly on the high side, so I'm just going to play around with the temperature and just cool it down a bit to about, I'd say, there. Next thing I'd like to do is sharpen the image up. So go down to the detail section here, apply all these settings, and then I like to apply the denoise function here, and AI is going to do the denoising. Next, I also like to increase the overall clarity, push it up to about 10, dehazing to about +3, and I'll give it a very slight texture of +2. Next thing I'd like to do is introduce a mask by going here, select the mask tool, and I want to select the subject, which is the kingfisher, and AI is going to detect it. And it's included the branch or the tree, which for this purpose of this basic tutorial I'm going to leave as is. But basically I want to edit this part of the kingfish, highlighted in red, and what I'd like to do is increase the saturation slightly to about 5. Once again, lift the shadows a bit, increase a bit of whites, reduce the highlights, and possibly just push up that exposure slightly up to about there. Also, I'd like to push up the clarity to about +10, dehaze to about +1, and texture just add in 1 or 2 there. Also, while I've got this mask selected, I'll push up the details, the sharpness, and all these settings below to about there. It's looking pretty good. I think it's time for us to go and adjust the colors. But before we do that, I'd like to possibly tone the background down a bit. So we're going to add in another mask, and we're going to select background. And AI selects the background in red, and what I'd just like to do here with the background is just tone down the overall exposure for the background slightly, just to make the subject really pop to about there. Pretty happy with that. So now we're going to go back to global adjustments. So we just hit the edit button over here, out of the mask, so we're not editing any more masks, and we're going to go down to color, so saturation, the color mixer, and we really want to push up the reds, the oranges. We don't want to go too much on those because it's bringing them out in the background. The yellows, yes, we definitely want to bring out those nice yellows on the body. The greens, the agua, the blues, we're really going to push those up, and then the purple as well, and the magenta. Then we switch over to the luminance, and here, remember, luminance is going to make the colors either darker or brighter. So we want to really lift that red out. The orange, we don't want to do that because it's just going to blur out the image, so we go about there. The yellows, I actually prefer to keep those yellows pretty neutral. The greens, you can see what it's doing to the wing here. I'd like to give that bit of glow there. So let's see, about +20, 22. The agua, it's not making much of a difference there. We'll leave that as is. The blues as well, it's not making much of an effect. Purples, not much either. And the magenta, so there's very slight adjustments there. We'll leave those two about there. And then lastly, I'd like to add in a post-crop vignette. I'm just going to darken the outer edges slightly, just to give that overall central focus on the subject. And that's it for this basic editing tutorial. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give me a big thumbs up, and see you soon in the next one.